Hi everyone. I'm just going to wait a few minutes for everyone to attend who's going to be here live. Welcome to the Summer of Magic. I'm Marissa Lovett, and you're watching Finding Your Path in Hard Times with the Ancestors and Descendants. And I'm just going to, oh, good morning. I'm just going to basically talk for a few minutes, and then I'm just going to ask for a little bit of help from my spirits. So my name's Marissa. I love helping people who want to work with their ancestral helping spirits, particularly. Good morning, Karen. Thank you for showing up live to watch. I began studying course shamanism about 20 years ago, and I have been seeing shamanic clients for about 3 years now. I create classes. I have a wonderful Patreon called Shamanic Earth Medicine, which Karen is a member of, and which I do with my sister Kirsten, who's also a ritualist and a shamanic practitioner. And I also have one-to-one mentoring sessions. And one of the reasons is because I began to realize over time that there were 3 groups of helping spirits that a lot of people weren't being trained or weren't being introduced to, in maybe that there might be something I could help them with. One of them is ancestral helping spirits. The other one is something called ancestral affinity spirits, which I'm going to talk about later. And the other one is ancestral helping spirits, which are evolved, which actually merge with the land, and which are called land spirits. So good morning. Hey, Christina. Hey, Jessica. It's good to see you guys. Thank you for watching. So I help people enter the other world with intent. Through either shamanic dreaming or the practice from course shamanism called shamanic journeying. And they're doing this to solve problems, recover ancestral knowledge, and heal themselves or others. And I'm passionate about sharing these practices with others, and I want to empower people who are called to remember the old ways. Hey, Kirsten. Hey, Catlin. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to ask for a little bit of help. And I also just want to let you know that if I don't for some reason see your question or comment, I will definitely come back after the talk and answer your questions, because I want to make sure that if you have any questions or comments, I definitely, please feel free to ask them. I definitely want to hear them and see them, and looking forward to sharing this with all of you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask for some help. And I will be looking down because I basically have written a lot of stuff down, and I want to make sure that I don't forget something that could be helpful. And good morning, Mario. Thank you for watching live. So today I'm going to share with you a little bit about finding your path in hard times with ancestral helping spirits and descendants. And I want to teach you about 3 basic things. Oh, good morning, Jessica. This is exciting. Thank you so much for showing up live, and because I know for some of you this is an awkward time. And the 3 things I want to share about are this: why you might want to connect with ancestral helping spirits or the descendants in the first place. Why do this? The second thing is ancestors and their role in recovering lost traditional knowledge, and why does that matter right now? And finally, I want to talk about dreams and visions of the descendants and how they are helping spirits for this time of great change and upheaval that we're in right now, and why it's important to look to them in order to keep ourselves on the right path. Hey, Mary. Yeah, coffee helps. Indeed it does. Yeah. Hi, Demet. So can you hear me? I chose this topic before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, it became really clear to me that how crucial, through my own experiences, the ancestral helping spirits and the spirits of the descendants are in helping me stay on track. because I was lucky to be healthy and secure and safe during this period. But sometimes I felt like I was in a fog. And practices with the ancestors, and some of these were new practices that I learned during this period, really helped to keep me grounded and on a good path. And they also helped me to anchor energetically. And reaching out to the world of the Descendants helped me to steer in a good way. So I'm going to share experiences that I and other people have had with this topic, and how, like, just some simple practices about how you can begin to work in this way. So why journey to the ancestors and descendants? In the animistic traditions, time is not linear. You can easily go back in time and connect with the ancestors, or they can come forward in time. We can reach out to the world of the descendants, or we can visit them. We can also travel to parallel realities in our current time and do magical work there. So we don't look at time in the same way in animistic cultures as the way we're trained to do this in our Western culture. So we have energies and spirits available to us and ways of working that we're not taught as Westerners to work with. The ancestors help us to take the long view. They hold the memories, the knowledge, and it's actually not uncommon in traditional cultures for ordinary people, artists, hunters, all kinds of people besides ritualists, to reach out to their ancestors for things like protection, advice, and even to recover lost traditional knowledge. And you may, like a way that you can kind of think about a little bit about going back in time for divination is, let's say you're doing a healing ceremony for to heal ancestral karma. You might see a little bit of the ancestors' pain or trauma in order to understand why things are happening in your current life the way they're happening. Also, I mean, in some ways, a diagnosis for soul retrieval might involve journeying back in time. So you can see how journeying works that way to go back in time. And the other thing I just want to mention is, please don't get hung up by, I use journeying because that's my training in core shamanism. But if you have another ritual pathway to connect with ancestors and descendants that works for you, if you dream, which I will be talking about, if you work in trance states at an altar, whatever you do, just substitute that for journeying when I say journeying, when I talk about journeys that you can do throughout the talk. So time shifting has recently become significant and big for me, not like before. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, there's something about, there are several traditional teachers who are talking about the energies of this time based on certain prophecies. A lot of this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. The Andean teachers are doing this, and some of the Mayan teachers, and they'll talk about how these energies are complex, and they're energies of upheaval. So there are parts of them that are supposed to happen, and parts of them that are kind of like the fallout from them happening, sort of. So I mean, the fact that you can work with time in a skillful way, I think for me personally would be really helpful at this time and really appropriate. So ancestral helping spirits can also be other than human in these cultures, and for us also. Because, like scientists, animists believe that we're descended from other life forms, animals, stars, rain, clouds, other planets, bodies, mountains, all kinds of things. And these are other than human ancestors of the human ancestors. And over time, as a family works with a particular animal or plant or body of water, they develop a relationship with this. This can even happen in Christian families with saints. And so that a talent for working with this spirit gets passed down through the bloodline. And this is called an ancestral affinity spirit. At least that's what Daniel Four calls it, and I think anthropologists call it also. Hi, Freya. My exercise equipment will be decorated and have an altar once I move. I trance there a lot. Cool. I had a friend who used to trance when she would run. Like that was when, like, all of a sudden she would, you know, like she had to move to get trance states. That's really cool. Descendants can be the spirits of the descendants. So that's sort of like the ancestor side of things. The spirits of the descendants help us understand what is possible. In other words, by going into the future and seeing what they're doing, we can see what we're sort of overlooking now, or even what's possible right now that we didn't realize was possible. Also, we may tap into what they need. In other words, the world we need to create now so that they can do what they need, so they can live their soul purposes. Descendants and their knowledge can be retrieved by the living. So there's an actual healing ceremony in some like Cork shamanism practices. I think Robert Moss does this and Alberto Villoldo does this, where you basically have either a dream of the future or you go into the future and you retrieve a person's destiny and bring it back to them. This happens when a person feels like their life has gone really off course. It's sort of like a soul retrieval, but instead of being about the past, it's about the future. So if you feel like you kind of don't have a future, or you're not sure what your future is and just feel really stuck, sometimes one of these ceremonies can be very powerful. So there's a healing power in the future as well. So descendants can be connected through dreams of the future. Spirits of the future, like the condor and eagle prophecy of the Andes that I'll be talking about later, of the Pachacudi prophecies, or practices like the children's fire, which comes from some of the North American traditions. There's a man named Mac McCartney who wrote a book called The Children's Fire, and basically he talked about a native idea that related to a fire, a sacred fire, that decisions by those who govern must be made with the idea of protecting the lives of the children. And when they mean the children, they don't just mean human children, which are crucial. They mean the other than human life forms, their children also. So while it means that, yes, I mean, you're going to cause harm by hunting and gathering and things like that, you only take what you need. You don't take so much that these other than human life forms can't get what they need to have children, or we can't get what we need to have children. So this is another way. And the whole 7 generations prophecy that more people know about, that's sort of I think a descendant of this original children's fire. So you can see how the descendants and the ancestors create a type of accountability and help us stay on purpose. It's like the ancestors hold the memories and the descendants are pulling us towards them with the future that they need. And they can also be accessed as helping spirits, because in animism, time is more flexible and we can journey before and after, like I mentioned before. Also in traditional societies, the ancestors and the descendants can switch roles within the same family bloodline. And the Maya have an idea about this. And you know that funny song, I'm My Own Grandpa? Well, in the Mayan traditions, there's this idea that the spirits of the ancestors are reincarnated, and sometimes even the babies are named after them. So when an infant is born, it can be said that he or she sprouted, or sometimes that he returned. It is believed, as with corn or maize, that after death, a person's life essence is regenerated in his or her descendants, especially in grandchildren. So there's this idea that just like corn dies and then it's born again through the seeds, that it's the same way with the spirits of the ancestors, that they come back as the descendants. So this adds an extra layer of accountability, because you're actually literally creating in your life now the pathway for the ancestors to return. Love that healing. Oh, cool. Yeah, I love that too. Hi, Elizabeth. How you doing? So one of the easier ways to connect with the future, with the world of the future, is through dreams, because everyone has these dreams of the future. And of course, they may be positive or negative. They can be individual or collective. But especially the powerful dreams are the ones that are collective, because that's when we're really being taken outside of our like personal energy field and really into the other world. And basically, a dream of the future is a portal into the other world. You can re-enter this dream in order to learn more about it with your helping spirits. And it's one of the easiest journeys, in my opinion, to take. If it is a nightmare, you can re-enter the dream to ask for ways to either prepare or to create a different reality to avoid it. If it is positive, the energy has a type of healing power which can be accessed now to create the conditions so that it might manifest. It's also a place in the other world, and it's one of the reasons why it's easy is because you know where you are. You can just recreate like a scene from the dream and then just enter into it. And there's other powerful things that you can do with it, but that's just a great way to get started. So, you like about the ancestors returning? Cool. Yeah, then grandkids do look like grandparents. It's true. Yeah, and there's also like a special relationship between them as well. There can be. So an example in my life was I had a dream about a car that floated in the air over the land, and there weren't roads anymore. They were just sort of like it was almost like they were mowed, or like pathways that were sort of where there were low-lying plants, and then surrounded by trees, and everyone traveled on these pathways, and there were everything was green. There was no more roads. So I kind of dream in symbols. So for me, this was the beginning of a time in my life when I became much more interested in sustainability, in trying to change my lifestyle to be more sustainable, and eventually to animism. And how could I change my life, my very Western, modern, technologically driven life, and make it a little bit more to blend with the earth in such a way. So I'm just wondering if any of you have ever experienced a dream about our collective future. And it's fine if you haven't, but it would be fun to see if you have. I'm going to take a minute and just light a candle in case. I am identical to my grandmother, but I feel we're separate. She's around me as a guide. Yes, often they do come back as guides. That's very, very normal. So what I'd like to do is, but it's more environmental, like technology and ways of travel. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's great. I mean, so what I would like to do right now is I would like to invite all of us to do a dream reentry. And, oh, cool, you have two. Not a dream, but several visions. Same thing. Okay, same thing. So I'd like all of us, if you're in a place where you can be quiet for a few minutes and you're not driving a car or doing something where you really have to be paying attention, I'd like to basically take a few moments and do just a short practice about entering a dream together. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like whistle a little bit, and as I whistle, I'm going to like basically just start rattling, and then I will stop whistling, and that's when you should go into the dream. Now, what you need to do to get started to do this is very simple. You just want to call on your spiritual team, whoever that is. It can be anything that you count on. Ancestors, angels. If you have a power animal, great, go with that. Anything, it doesn't matter. The point is that it needs to be powerful and protective. And you'll bring this with you into the dream that you will recreate in your mind's eye. And that is going to be the place in the other world where we're going to journey. So if you can do that, oh, good morning, Lynn. We're just going to do a little dream reentry now where you just close your eyes, call on a helping spirit that you trust. After I whistle, just recreate the image of the dream, and you're going to walk into it and ask for some information. And you can ask for any kind of information you want about the future, because this dream is a portal into the future, into a possible future. Okay, so go ahead and close your eyes if it's convenient for you to do this right now. Begin to come back into the room. Take a deep breath. Move your fingers and toes. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And if you'd like, you're welcome to share something about what you saw. And if it's personal, that's fine too. You can also, you're free to message me if you would prefer to communicate privately. That's wonderful. So you kind of get a sense of working with the dream, of sort of the beginnings of how you might be able to access the energies of the future through a spirit or a contact with the future that you've had. And basically, this is something that can be worked with. I did another talk in one of the Christina's summits about manifesting with shamanic dream work, and there's some further practices that you can do that will help you with dream work. But if you want to manifest something about the future, but just going into it and working with it in a shamanic dream reentry is a powerful way to begin to really connect with that energy and to bring it into your life, if that's what you choose to do, or to avoid a future that, or to prepare for a future that is not super positive. So it's just a way of kind of like having some more empowerment. So now I want to talk a little bit about ancestors and recovering traditional knowledge. But first, for any of you who don't already know this, I want to talk a little bit about what is an ancestral helping spirit and what isn't. With the people that I have studied with, Daniel Four, there's a great talk about this called by Martine Prechtel on YouTube called Grief and Praise. Not everyone who dies is an ancestral helping spirit. there is a process of the ancestor has to go on a journey to the land of the dead and be fully integrated, or the ancestor has to be what they call ancestralized, which is where they're sort of merged with the other well ancestors so that they sort of speak with one voice, even if you may see them as different beings. They're connected in that way. And when they do that, they lose some of the emotional baggage that they had when they were alive. They lose any curse energies that might have been there, or just cords to the living, and they become much safer and healthier to be around. The ancestors, those who have deceased, who have not achieved this state, are called ghosts, and their energy is called ghost energy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So there are also particularly evolved ancestors who may also empower a place in nature. Sometimes like holy places are like this, and they continue to speak to descendants. And basically you can go there and communicate with these ancestors. They're sort of like a combination of like nature spirits and ancestors. And in Peru, they're called Aukikuna. But they have different names in different cultures. Christina says, I definitely have a better relationship with some ancestors now that they're on the other side. Yes, that tends to be true. That relationship, in my experience, because I had a lot of unwell ancestors, became even more powerful as the lines were healed. And even more helpful. So in addition, there are ways of asking the ancestors for help and communicating with them. Part of this help includes recovering traditional knowledge. So I'm going to give a couple of examples from like a traditional culture. Because I have contact with Andean mysticism, we learn a lot about a group named the Canoe. And they're famous for their beautiful weavings. So one of the weavers, and she was just an ordinary person, a weaver, they had forgotten how to do a particularly beautiful and complex textile. So she went into the memories of the ancestors and was able to retrieve this information, and they were able to recreate these beautiful textiles. Another time, a woman, an indigenous woman from the Arctic area, dreamed of this tattoo that women get, that they're like sort of 3 lines along their chin. And she'd never seen anyone with this tattoo. And then she found out that this tattoo used to be done, and she was able to recover this tattoo knowledge, and women started getting this tattoo again, and the symbol, the spiritual protection and power that goes with having it. So there's sort of 4 different types of connecting to your well ancestors. The first and sometimes most underrated type is offerings. Offerings can be like, there's a generic kind of offering, which is like in Northern Europe, which is baking something and then going to a body of water and crumbling it into the water as a way to feed your ancestors. They like food and drink offerings. Susie's going to be talking about this a lot more. But there are also specific offerings that ancestors may request of you, like to make a ritual object that will be like a spiritual house for them. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. You may also encounter them, and when you make these offerings, you'll start to hear them more. You can do a guided meditation. Daniel 4 does this, where you meet the well ancestors. You can have a spontaneous dream. I had one with my medicine bundle where I had placed stones around me that represented the land of the dead, and I was going to journey there, and I fell asleep, and I met a well ancestor that way. Or you could have a guided journey, which is something that I have done for other people, where you just open sacred space with the intent of the person meeting their well ancestors. But many people meet their well ancestors spontaneously also. And basically, there are ways of asking, so there are sort of 4 phases of this. The first phase is where you're doing offerings as a habit. And as you do these offerings, you start hearing the ancestors more in whatever way you hear them. They show up, things in your life start to change, you get messages, family members call and start talking about them, it's like things like that. You begin to understand the energetic signature of the ancestors. What did they feel like, look like? How do you know it's them and not one of the ghosts? The third one is that ancestors start to partner with you to create change. You can go to them, ask for help. obstacles get cleared away. Good things come into your path. It works a little bit like some of the things that Christine was talking about with Saint Expedite. So it could be slower, but it can have some of the same effects because ancestors were once alive, and so they're really good at helping with practical problems. But they also can initiate people in different traditions. They can initiate people to be healers of different kinds. They can initiate people as creative people. And the current of the ancestors begins to flow through you so that you begin to embody them. And if you can work with the well ancestors this way, there's actually a beautiful practice where you can actually, Daniel Ford teaches this, where you can like bless the family members while you're embodying the ancestral helping spirits. So it's like a type of very gentle spirit possession. So one of the biggest roles of the ancestors is to vet the other spirits and energies. This is one of the best things they can do. They don't just vet the ghost energy. They can tell you, like, if you're in a healing or a journey and a new spirit comes along and you're kind of like, I don't know whether to trust you or not. The ancestors are incredibly protective, and they can tell you, you can trust this spirit or you cannot trust this spirit, or this is how much you can trust them. So they're very good in that way. And basically, there's another way that they can communicate, which is by teaching you things that you didn't know, by making knowledge available. The easiest way that I think people in the West can access this, and the most common, is actually through genealogical research. Now, once you've made contact with powerful ancestors, you can begin to be taught by them. And you can, along with their affinity spirits, which I'll talk about in a minute, ancestral helping spirits hold the patterns of life before the time that you can remember. So there's a modern way to approach this, and there's a traditional way. The traditional way is that you may ask for a dream from the ancestor or have a vision. But there's also a way that you can actually go online and talk to the ancestors this way. You can use internet research that's inspired by the ancestors. A way to kind of get this rolling is with genealogical research. The ancestors can respond well to when you start to look for them. And if you add something like offerings, or you do something for an ancestor to remember them with the family, or you do something, it's almost like the energy of your intent, the work that you're doing, creates this kind of pathway that lets the well ancestors come through when they couldn't come through before. And suddenly, all this information gets opened up. Things that you didn't know about them all of a sudden become available. So I'm going to take a break here and say, I try giving things from my land, yes, and burn a lot of ancestor money and our traditional coffee. I was once baptized in fire by my grandmother in a dream. Yeah, that sounds like a very powerful initiation. Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. This has happened to people I know, like not just me, but other people I know. I think even Daniel writes about it in his book. And here's like one simple way that it happened to me. One time I was basically researching basically I was talking to my ancestors about hierarchical relationships, what we would call patriarchy. And I was doing this research about something that Indo-European people did a long time ago called patron-client relationships. These were like unequal relationships. And they wanted me to do this other research about something called guest-host relationships. This is boring, but it has a point. And these were more reciprocal relationships. And I didn't want to do the guest-host relationship. So the next day, I saw a post on Facebook where this man who was very connected to animism had written this very long, well-researched post about guest relationships. And I just started laughing because, like, this is the way the ancestors communicate. When they want you to know something, they just put it right in your path. And so I read it, and I kind of took it in and kind of, stuck with that for a while. And suddenly I had a breakthrough where I realized with these other unequal relationships, these patron-client relationships, that in the past, and this is the point that they were trying to teach me, that there was a little bit more expected of the person who was on top in that relationship. There was a type of reciprocity. It wasn't exactly like the guest host ones, but it was more than what we have now. And that was the thing that they wanted me to understand. So it's kind of a long, sort of drawn out story, but that's sometimes the way they communicate through the internet, or through books that you're reading. That it isn't always like dreams, visions, or mystical experiences. It can happen through people that you meet, or practical things that cross your path, or the things you just download that you all of a sudden can do that you couldn't do before. And so the other thing is that another way is through clan spirits. These are affinity animals, or affinity plant spirits that have been working with your family for a long time. These spirits can be a safe way of working if you have a lot of ghost energy. Now, sometimes there are sort of like logical ways of figuring this out instead of waiting for a dream or a vision to come your way about the ancestral helping spirit. So, for example, you might do some research where the meaning of your name might be connected to an animal, or there might be a coat of arms that's connected to a plant, or it can come up in your ancestors may send you an interaction with an actual animal out in the world, or your ancestors may send you a dream that you understand this is an animal, a tree, a plant, a place that we had a strong affinity, a saint, that even if your family has forgotten their affinity spirits, the ancestors will come back with that information. So, for example, one of my ancestors was very close to the elder trees. And suddenly this flood of information about how to work with the elder came through. There was I got a little song about it. There was elderflower tea recipes showed up, and elderflower salve recipe showed up, which I haven't made yet, but that was pretty interesting because I didn't even know elderflowers existed. And so they just basically start teaching you this way. Another time, one of my ancestors was connected to, his last name is a name associated with people who work with horses. And so all of a sudden horses started showing up, including a video I saw about how horses were domesticated. I was also having a series of dreams about Siberia, and I was like, why am I dreaming about Siberia? I'm not Siberian. And all of a sudden I found out that horses were domesticated in Siberia, and that some of the people that I am related to, that many of us are related to in Northern Europe, were some of these horse cultures who lived in Siberia a long time and then came into the rest of Europe. So this is some kind, like an information that they're trying to share with you that strengthens the bond, so that then you can work with them on more practical things. But oftentimes these things that seem abstract, they wind up finding their way into something practical. Iridescent Sacred Light, I love this work. Awesome, awesome. Cedar trees, no matter where I go, I get gifted a cedar tree. That is powerful. Yes. And if there's anything that can really help right now, it's cedar. Yeah, that's beautiful. For me, it's juniper. That's cool. They also will guide you to understand the relationship to food that we once had. We don't have a lot of teaching stories in our culture, but there are a few fairy tales or folk tales that do talk about how we should treat the wild. And in particular, there was one that my ancestors wanted me to know about seal hunting that was in Scotland, where this man was told he could not hunt the seals, and he got taken down into the other world through the water, and he had to help heal the prince of the seals who he had accidentally hurt. And then when he came back up again, he made a promise he would never hunt seals again. So this is kind of like a relationship with like affinity spirits sort of woven into a folk story. That's pretty much all we have right now of these sort of very ancient traditions. So here are some like journey or dream experiences that you can do with ancestors or affinity spirits. And once again, just substitute journey for your preferred method of connecting with spirits. You can journey, since ancestors reincarnate along bloodlines, you can journey to a past time when you were alive in your own bloodline, if this happened for you. I did this. It was really cool. Hank Wesselman teaches this. I found out I was a German or European farmer, and he was talking to me about, you know, their connection to the land and stuff like that, and it was just really cool. Dreams that or journeys that have shown me how the ancestors saw their spirituality or way of life. You can basically ask your well ancestors, help me understand your way of looking at the world and help me bring some of that into my life now. And they will send you a dream where you can do that. You can also take this dream and put this on your dream altar. And I talk about a little bit of that in this other training called Manifesting with Shamanic Dream Work. But it's really easy. You just blow into like an object like this. And then just, you can do a card or anything like that and just put it on your altar. And that dream will start to work on you. And will start to create an energy line to your present. Hey, Mary. You can embody the well ancestors to learn. This is that practice I talked about where it's a little bit of like spirit possession. And you can also do this with the affinity spirits. If you're worried about how well your ancestors are, and you don't want to, if you're scared about ghost energy, you can embody the affinity spirits. And so far, I haven't had anyone or myself have a bad experience with that. Sometimes people's power animals, their guardian animal spirits, turn out to be ancestral affinity spirits. So they can be powerful that way also. And basically, another time I deliberately asked an affinity spirit for a dream. And in this dream, it was a really cool dream because I had been doing a lot of like grief work for the collective and grief work for my ancestors. And they sent me this dream about crying little tears. And they said that crying little tears was grieving for myself, whereas the big tears was grieving for others collectively. And they wanted me to grieve for myself, and then they wanted me to create some kind of content about animistic practices about working with to stay in balance emotionally. So that's kind of interesting, and that may happen in the future. But that's the kind of dream that an affinity spirit that is very closely connected to your ancestors may send you. And this is on a line where I am having trouble with ghost energy, and I am involved in the healing process with this line. So it's very helpful to like get a really clear, strong message from the well ancestors. So yes, I was taken to the healing cave of my ancestors. Oh, wow, that's cool. Oh, interesting. I first met an ancestral spirit being taken to a sacred cave with this beautiful water in the center. And a white ghost-like spirit flying around it. She was of the mountain. Before I learned about Apu, she introduced me to my first ancestral helping spirit. Wow, that's beautiful. Yes. Yeah, there are many places that hold the ancestors too, like mountains. There are traditions of mountains doing that. And sometimes it's done deliberately, like there are ceremonies to determine if there are wise ancestors that are living in the mountains. In fact, the Maya have a whole relationship with some of the mountains where they actually have stones that or artifacts from the ancestors that are gifted to the young, and then the kids grow up with the stones, and then they have dreams that come from the ancestors, and it's like a whole ritual cycle. Unwell ancestors can affect the descendants' ability to live their purpose. That's one of the things they do. Like if you have a pattern, and Christina Pratt does a really great talk about this on Why Shamanism Now, where she talks about if you constantly have this situation where you're going along with a manifestation and all of a sudden at exactly the same point it kind of blows up on you, that you might want to investigate if there's ghost energy involved. Because there could be an ancestor who had a bad experience who's trying to protect you by kind of throwing a wrench at you. And so, excuse me. There's a relatively simple way to begin to release these obstacles that I was taught. And it's accessible to anyone. And this is to work with the energy of fire. Fire is, in many traditions, is considered to be our oldest ancestor. And we all have ancestors who worked with fire. So I was taught a very simple fire ceremony when I began to study with some of Alberto Violdo's students. And we often performed fire ceremonies. In fact, we performed one for 3 ancestors who had different core problems that might affect us now and pass down their ancestral karma. Many secrets came out during this process about my family, but I also experienced much better health about it. So it was a very purifying and powerful ceremony. I performed these ceremonies many times and have coached others to do them, and they've all had really good results. So now finally I'm going to talk about dreams of the descendants. But first let me just ask if you, very cool about the Mayans and the ancestral stones. Yeah, they're called like Kamachuyes or something. I can't remember the name of them, but they're a specific thing. They're like an artifact that comes from this one mountain where they actually go to do ceremony. And Kamachuyes maybe or something. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll research it and write it down. She was the Finnish Sami ancestor, so white reindeer are totally. Oh yes, yes, very powerful. Yeah. It's very interesting when you have a guardian animal spirit that is actually connected to the ancestors. It doesn't always have to happen that way. Sometimes it connects with another tradition that your soul has a great connection to. Sometimes it connects to your local environment. You know, the guardian animal spirits can take many forms, but there is a tradition in some cultures of them having to do with the ancestors and the world of the ancestors. So I'm now going to talk about dreams of the descendants and helping spirits of the future for this new time. So they're helping spirits of the 5th world, and there are some traditions that believe that we're in a new time. There's many different ways of describing it. Because I have contact with the Mayan traditions and the Andean traditions, I tend to kind of focus on that. So I worked a little bit with the prophecies, or by people who teach the prophecies. And I tried to understand them. Some of these prophecies, excuse me, allergies are brutal right now. Some of these prophecies are kind of like a substitute or an energetic guardian for the world of the descendants. In other words, they're not just helping us live now in our own time. They're helping us prepare a world like the children's fire where our descendants and the descendants of other life forms can live. So these energies are tricky and complicated. And there are teachers who are basically talking about how to work with them, how to understand them, how to be in harmony with them, because as we all know, like just what we're going through in 2020, they're very complex and they have many different dimensions to them. And sometimes it can be very hard to sort of stay on purpose with them. Like the children's fire, these are descendants of all living beings, but also human descendants. And it's interesting that the children's fire was created during a time of incredible stress. So these things have been tested. This is why they have such great power. And it's interesting to me that fire was also involved. So a very simple practice is to listen to the dreams of children or younger people. These sometimes can be messages from the spirit world about the future. And this is done across the board in many cultures. The Mayan calendar prophecies also can help a little bit about and working with the Mayan calendar and following it. There are several really good teachers who are on Facebook right now. If you follow the calendar, this can help you connect with these spirits. In fact, there's a woman in my Patreon named Marita Esteva who also works with the calendar. There's good calendar teachers right now that weren't available 20 years ago. I am most familiar with the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, and it's the one that I work with the most. One of the ideas in Andean mysticism is that there are time periods, and that when a time period shifts, it's like things flip upside down. This is called a pachacuti. And one of the sort of aspects of this pachacuti is that there will be a meeting of the eagle and the condor, which is a complex prophecy which talks about North American and South American indigenous people meeting and working together, as well as we in the West recovering our traditional knowledge and sort of the writer called it re-indigenizing ourselves. So some of these things coming back, like shamanism, animism, witchy stuff, this is all sort of part of that prophecy right now. It's a very complex prophecy because it has to do with aligning us so that we will be more in harmony with each other and the non-human community. And so one of the symbols of this prophecy obviously is the condor, which is the holy bird and a guardian of the upper world in some of the Andean traditions. And there's a teacher named Pumakispe who says that the heart of the condor is very light, that's why it can fly, and that he has a stone that represents this light. And this also represents his heart. And that when there's stress, when there's times that are like there's grief and unbelievable suffering, like what's going on right now, this stone represents his heart, and it helps to keep him light, because we need to have our hearts be as light as possible right now. Not that we should never suffer. I mean, the message about grieving my own tears was an important one, but just that you don't get overwhelmed by despair, so that you have this stone that you can work with that is a symbol of the light heart of the condor. So a couple of the practices that I've used, which is also something that you can use at this time if you want to connect with the world of the Descendants. The first one, and this is also a Hank Wesselman journey, there's something called a spirit canoe journey, where in core shamanism, where it's borrowed from a traditional culture, where you basically get a bunch of people. Sometimes they even sit like one behind the other, as if they're in a real canoe, and they journey together into the other world. And this time you would journey into the future to a descendant to discover how you can be of service to the descendants. This is not unlike the Children's Fire. It's basically the same idea. You're going into the future and you're saying, how can I help? What can I do now? And sometimes the message is just be yourself, live your purpose, but other times there are other messages that I found. You may journey into the world of the descendants to ask if there's a practice that they know about in the future that we could do now. Sandra Ingerman teaches that one. What I do the most is something that Christina Pratt teaches. In shamanism and animism, we tend to think of like three worlds, although there can be more of them. There's a lower world that connects to the ancestors. There's a middle world, which is the one you and I are talking and listening to each other right now. And then there's an upper world, which is through like a cloud membrane, which connects to things like deities, wise ancestral helping spirits that are very evolved, guides, teachers, things like that. So in this journey, what connects these things for me is a tree, the world tree. And so I go with intent into the world tree, and I connect with the eye of time, which is something that Christina Pratt talks about, and I journey into the descendants this way. Now, for me, the eye of time, I'm actually journeying into a tree branch that goes into the future. But there are some people who journey into the future by going into the other world, and that may be your way. So what I do basically is also do this as a lucid dream journey. And that's one of my favorite ways to journey, is to journey through dreaming. So basically you set up the beginning of the journey, go through the eye of time, and then you go consciously into sleep as you're going into the future. So last year I began to realize that there was a type of spirit road that was sort of being created between us and the descendants by all of us doing our practices. But I realized that people need practices, or they need to connect the relationships they have with their ancestors in order to bring protection in, especially if they're working outside of a tradition. Because right now everybody doesn't have a tradition, and they can't have a tradition because it's just too hard on the traditions. So, or at least right now that's what it looks like. So there's got to be another way of people to be empowered and protected. And one of those ways is working with your well ancestors. But when I had a series of dreams this year, I realized that working with the descendants is just as important. So I feel that the new energies of upheaval are creating a need for a meeting up of traditional knowledge of the ancestors and even shamanic skills, even if it's just linking up younger people or people that are new to ancestors with their ancestors, with like the energies of the descendants. And so I had a series of experiences that happened to me. One of them is a couple of years ago. My sister and I, we're both ritualists, we journeyed to one of the holy mountains, which is a type of helping spirit for us, who sort of represents the fifth world, called Apu Suryamana, which is in a book that a mentor wrote called Light of the Andes. And over time, this mountain spirit began to sort of reveal, at least in our contact with it, that it was helping us to be more aligned, to change things in our lives, and eventually to maybe communicate with other people about some of this. So we decided to create a Facebook group called Shamanic Earth Medicine, which eventually became Animistic Earth Medicine, where I got to meet a lot of really amazing people, including some of you. And this was like and eventually led to a Patreon. And this was a place where I began to realize that we could begin to share information with each other and maybe talk about certain aspects of animism that might not have been as up front and center in the shamanic training that I received earlier. I also had a dream about a helping spirit from the Andean tradition that was a shadow dream. So what this was, and this relates to that sort of heavy heart. I had a dream about a condor flying through the mountains. And what the dream was telling me is that there's an aspect of my spirit that is happy, that is light, that I hadn't integrated yet. And I needed to work with this as a shadow dream to bring this energy back into my life and lift my heart up. And it really did help a great deal. So these are ways that sometimes the spirits of the future can come in now and help. I also had a series of dreams about just working with the descendants and what their lives was like. So I had a dream about work being different. And that's very important to me because the idea of how people are treated at work is deeply important to me. I had a dream about where I saw like a beautiful future, but I was given an information about a ritual object that I had and how I needed to work with a star that I work with for manifestation. So sometimes they'll give you like specific information. I had another dream about the wisdom of the ancestors that were returning and that the descendants were going to become much more comfortable with the world of the ancestors. In other words, the descendants are living in a world where the ancestors and their traditional knowledge is much more woven into their everyday life than the world we live in now. So then after that, I could do journeys, which is, well, what can I do now to enhance that? How can I live that or model that in some better way? And I also had nightmares, a dream about more epidemic disease, a possible future like our own present. So I treated this like the way I work with nightmares. So these dreams pull me towards working with my passions in a way that hopefully creates a link to my purpose and destiny. And the dreams can be worked with like spirits. You can talk to them. You can negotiate with them. You can work with some parts and not other parts. I mean, you have agency as a ritualist. Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Oh, hi Jessica. Hi, how are you doing? Again. So I just wanted to open this up right now. If you have any questions, let me see if I can see some of these. My son passed, and lately a lot of ancestors have been visiting me in my dreams. I'm also smelling roses, only a few seconds at a time, but happens in my kitchen. Oh, that's interesting. Do you work with roses ever? Because sometimes if you get a scent, for me, a scent can be like a way of the ancestor or spirit communicating with me. And descendants connecting to star origins, star ancestors. My son as a child kept talking about flying cars that would be powered with crystals. He insisted about this. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. I like to pay attention to dreams of younger people if I encounter them. I'll meditate on them, or sometimes I've done journeys on them, because I do think of them. And just in general, like when people have prophetic dreams like that, I just try to pay attention to them because I always think there's something in there for me. No, I don't work with roses. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I mean, I'm not saying you have to. That's just how it manifests for me. Smell is very important. So let me just take a minute to see if anyone else has a question or comment. Thank you all for these great comments that you've been doing. They're awesome. Roses, love the symbolism. Yeah, I work with them a lot. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Do you think you are time traveling in your dreams? I ask because I have lived my life up till I was 35, 3 years ago in the dream world. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, you time travel in dreams. Because you can time travel in journeying, trance states, dreams, because in the animistic world, time just isn't accessed the same way as it is in ordinary waking reality. And so all the things that seem impossible in linear time are completely possible in the dream world, in my opinion. And the dream world is also a place. Like if you have a powerful experience of a place in your dreams that's good, that has good energy, and that maybe you've connected with a helping spirit there, you can journey back in there and make that a part of your map of the other world if you journey a lot. That's a really normal and good way to work with the other world. That has happened to me too, Jessica Luna. Whole lifetimes. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, those would be very interesting dreams for me. How can we connect with you to attend more of your trainings? Oh, well, the exciting thing is I am going to be talking now about the free gift. And this is, for me, really fun. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I've created a free gift for everyone who's attended, which I will be adding as a link in a few minutes. And it's a PDF about how to perform a very simple fire ceremony. It also has one of the fire ceremonies. It can help you release bad habits created by your ancestors. It can help you connect with your well ancestors. It can even honor the descendants by visualizing a future that would be good for them and that works better for all of them. You can obviously get it by simply entering your name and email into the inbox when after I add the link. But the other thing is that you will also, if you get the free gift, it has links to every way that you can reach me. I'm Celestial Tree on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have a Patreon called Shamanic Earth Medicine with my sister Kirsten. And I am on Pinterest, I think it's Celestial Tree also. And I have a YouTube channel, but it's under my name, Marissa Lovett. So it's kind of hard to find. But I just wanted to say, before I thank my helping spirits, I just want to say thank you very, very much for joining me. I am going to be going through and reading all the questions and comments, and I really appreciate everyone who showed up live. I just really appreciate it. I will be giving away a free half-hour session to someone in the group who either watches the live or the replay. And I also want to say thank you to Christina for organizing all of this and making this possible, and to all the great presenters. Pamela was awesome before me, and Susie's going to be this afternoon, and she's going to be great. She has great stuff about the ancestors. So really exciting, awesome information. But thank you for sticking with this with me. I really had fun sharing it. Okay, so now I'm going to thank my helping spirits. Thank you all. Blessings.